Want us to start? Oh, there we go. Okay, we're live. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Wrestling with Reality podcast. My name is Kris Kloss. I'm going to be hosting along with my co-host, Eric Melikian. Eric, how you doing, pal?
Great, Chris. How you doing, buddy?
Doing good. And man, oh man, what a show we have for you this time. We have one of the great ring announcers, one of the great wrestlers, one of the great trainers. This guy's been through it all, and he has been with them all the great stars of yesteryear, specifically the World Wrestling Federation, WWF/WWE. His name is Bill Anderson, ring announcer at the LA Sports Arena, EWF, wrestled in Mexico, Japan. We're going to get into all of that. So, Bill Anderson, welcome, sir, to the Wrestling with Reality podcast.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you guys having me on today.
It's such an honor to be on, sir.
Well, it's my pleasure also. It really is. I appreciate guys that respect the business. And I watched some of your previous shows. I wanted to compliment you guys on the one you did with Jack Studd. I watched that, and he is a great friend of mine, a great guy. I love the guy. Me and him did some cemetery hunting. I went to Humphrey Bogart's grave and did some private things like that a couple years ago. Jack Studd's an old friend of mine, and you guys did a wonderful job interviewing him. I haven't even told him yet that I appreciated his words about me, and also that I watched the interview, and he did a hell of a job on it.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you so much. Well, we got a lot of mutual friends in Gary Key, Rick Sadis, quite a few guys.
Oh, I haven't heard Rick Sadis' name in a long time. I had lunch with Gary Key. He lives out here in Phoenix now. And I had lunch with Gary. It's been a year ago now. But due to some health issues, I was supposed to get together with him during the Super Bowl a few months back, and I didn't make it. Yeah, Gary's just a few miles from me. Love Gary. Good guy. Always been good guy.
Amazing human being.
Yeah.
Well,
Gary was the butt of a lot of jokes with me in years past, and I apologized to him when I had lunch with him because myself and Jesse Hernandez, we used to make jokes about Gary, but we loved him. I mean, it was all in fun. I make as many jokes about myself, believe me. But we had a lot of fun with Gary. Used to play a lot of ribs on him. Putting rocks in his suitcase when he wasn't looking, and then he'd go to lift his suitcase up, and it would literally be hanging on the floor because he couldn't lift it. I did a lot of ribs like that on Gary and through the years, and he was a fun guy.
Absolutely.
So
we'll talk in depth about all this. A lot of this guys we know, we have friendships with, the connection, and basically just to start it off, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you broke into the professional wrestling business back in the 70s.
Well, it was 1973. It was my first initiation into the business. There was a local promotion in town here. A wrestler by the name of Kurt Von Steiger was the promoter and main event wrestler. He had just come from Amarillo, him and Carl Von Steiger. Kurt was going to be the regular promoter here every week in Phoenix. And one day I was going down to the shows. I was a fan of wrestling. I was just a 16-year-old kid, and I didn't know who the promoter was. I just loved watching the matches and everything. And one day I exited the building after watching the matches. My mom used to drive me in. We lived 15 miles out of Phoenix. She used to drive me in and drop me off for the show, and then come back and pick me up a couple hours later. And one day it was pouring down rain. I'm standing outside of this gym. It's called the Immaculate Heart Gym. It was a Catholic church where Kurt was holding his first shows in downtown Phoenix in 73. And there was no awning outside the front doors. And I walked out after the show, and it was just like pouring down rain. And I'm standing out there getting wet, and all of a sudden the door opens, and this lady who had taken the tickets earlier, she says, "What are you doing standing out in the rain?" And I says, "Where else am I going to go?" She said, "Well, come in from the rain." And I came in, and Kurt Von Steiger was taking the ring down and putting it in a trailer in the back of the building by himself. And she says, "Why don't you help my husband with the ring?" And I was like, "We're doing what?" Well, I mean, I didn't understand nothing. I was just a kid. And she says, "Help him take the ring down, carry those pieces of wood and steel." So I walked over and introduced myself to Kurt, and I helped him, did a good job for a kid. And we got done, and Kurt says, "Hey, why don't you come back early next Friday here, about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and you can help me set the ring up, and then you can help me tear it down at the end of the night, and I won't charge you for a ticket." It was a pretty good deal. Tickets were only like $2 or $3 back then. He says, "So you could help me set up the ring and tear it down for like $3." I love the business. So, I mean, and I says, "I'd love to do it." And I jumped at the chance. So that was my initiation into the business. And as the weeks went on, I told Kurt that my dream was to be a wrestler. So he says, "Well, why don't I put you in the ring with one of our guys and just see, if you have what it takes." And I was green, didn't know anything, wasn't cocky at all, just not very naive teenager. So he put me in the ring with this guy named Johnny Costas. Johnny was an old Greek wrestler, a shooter with, what they termed in the old days, real tough guy. But he was like Gene LaBelle tough. He didn't have to ever show you how tough he was. You just knew it. He would demonstrate subtly how tough he was. So Johnny got me in the ring. Beautiful guy, long since passed away. But Johnny got me in the ring, treated me so calmly and did not distort my body, but he trained me for a workout and treated me great. And by the end of the day, before the show started that night to watch the matches, I couldn't even hold my head up. My head was just twisted sideways. It was so sore. Every bone in my body, I could barely stand up. And the next week, I was back setting the ring up for Kurt. And he says, "I didn't think I'd ever really see you again." And I said, "Oh, come on, man. I told you I want to be a wrestler." I was just a skinny kid. I'm 6'2", but I was 145 pounds, 150 pounds back then. I wish I was about that now. And Kurt says, "Do you want to get in the ring again?" And I said, "Yeah." He put me in the ring. I honestly, on the second workout, I don't even know who was in the ring with me, but he was just impressed that I came back. And again, I wasn't beaten up like Buzz Sawyer used to do, is what I heard. Break your leg and see if you come back, kid, that kind of thing. Johnny would just slowly twist you into knots without you knowing it, probably like Stu Hart a little bit, without you really knowing, but just to test out your endurance and see if your passion was really there. And mine was. And I came back week after week after week, and I learned how to set the ring up and tear it down. And eventually, as time went on, with Kurt's promotion in '73, one night a ring announcer didn't show up for him at the Madison Square Garden Arena in Phoenix. An arena that sat from 1929 to 2005 in Phoenix before they tore it down. It was an old building. Jim Lundo started that building in 1929. It's a very old school wrestling building. Gorgeous George worked there. Johnny Cash did concerts there in the 50s and 60s. So it had a lot of entertainment. Evangelical events there in this old building. And Kurt had an announcer not show up, and I was wearing a tie. I was just there, just there doing nothing. But he says, "I'd like to give you a shot. I need a ring announcer," and I can't go in and do it. Obviously, I'm in the main event wrestling, and I don't know any of these other fans personally. So can you go in and do it? And I said, "Yeah, Kurt, whatever you need, I'm there." And I got in the ring, and there's some pictures of me when I first started out, and I'm skinny as a rail, but I'm standing there with the mic, and that that bode well for me because let me just jump ahead 15 years later. And one night at the LA Sports Arena, Lee Marshall didn't show up at the LA Sports Arena. And Chief Jay Strongbow saw me in the dressing room. I was there again in a suit with a tie on and dressed very nicely. And he says, Bill, have you ever done any ring announcing? And I says, well, yeah, back in Phoenix in 1973 in front of 200 people or 300 people, at the most 400. And he says, well, there's 15,000 out here, and I need a ring announcer, and you're my man. So here's the lineup sheet. Go out and do the best job you can do because you have experience. And I was like, okay. In my mind, it didn't feel like a lot of experience going out in a WWF show when I had done announcing for Kurt Von Steiger. So that was my break in to the business in '73. And, that's just how it started.
What year was that when Strongbow came up to you at the LA Sports Arena?
That would have been 87, I believe, 1987. At the latest, early 1988. No, I'd say 1987 because 88 we were starting to do those Z channel things. Mm-hmm. So that network came in and filmed, I think, at least 6, maybe 8 house shows, complete shows from beginning to end. They aired on a channel called the Z channel.
Yeah.
Which I was thrilled as the ring announcer because I'm sitting looking down at my heroes doing commentating. I got superstar Billy Graham or Jesse Ventura or Bobby the Brain Heenan or Rod Trongard or Gorilla Monsoon. I got all these heroes of mine and friends of mine right at the bottom of the ring, and I'm looking down, and Gorilla Monsoon says, now up to our ring announcer. Man, and that's me. Let me tell you, I was a mark for it all, man, and I'm right involved in it. So it was a real thrill.
So the Z channel, okay, so the LA Sports Arena, I want to say it was WrestleMania 2 in '86 that Lee Marshall was there in the ring. And so I guess he was doing stuff. I know he lived out here in SoCal.
Yeah.
I've actually bumped into him once in Malibu, of all places. At some
he was a beautiful man. I loved Lee. I hope you feel the same. Lee was a stand-up man. I knew him for many, many years. He broke my heart when he passed away. Too young, and I love Lee. Lee, I tried to take my style as a ring announcer when I was younger and had dark hair, a little bit like Vince McMahon for a while there. And I tried to copy Lee's style, although I've always been an admirer of Howard Finkel, of course. But Lee Marshall was my real guy to go to for style as a ring announcer. I love Lee. There's no voice. I couldn't, my voice is shot now. I don't have a voice anymore, but like Lee had that voice that was made for radio and TV and announcing. He was made for it, and I love the man. But he chose to go work for Vern Gagne, and I don't know the particulars of why he left or anything else. I just know he didn't show up, and Chief was in a panic in the dressing room. And I was his go-to guy, and it became a regular job for about the next 8 years, pretty much, in Southern California. I did, Fresno, Bakersfield, San Diego, LA. I actually did ring announcing all the way to Honolulu, Denver, Phoenix, even up to Seattle. On rare occasions, they would fly me to places where they had ring announcer issues. And so I got to see part of the country as a ring announcer for WWF, and again, hang out with the talent and hang out with my friends and get paid for it. So it became a real beautiful thing. Plus, In 19, oh, I believe it was 1990 when I was doing ring announcing for WWF in LA. Is when you guys were probably there when they shot the pilot for the TV show Tag Team
Yeah, tag
with
team.
Roddy Piper and Jesse Ventura. I got to do the announcing for that, and I got my Screen Actors Guild card for that. And they paid me, as well as my pay for the night from WWF, they paid me an extra like $1,500. And they says, "Are you going to be satisfied with that?" And I'm thinking, like, "Are you kidding?" I didn't tell them I would have done it for free. Are you kidding me? I love Roddy. I'd already worked in a movie with Roddy and Body Slam. I love Roddy and Jesse. My God, are you kidding me? You're gonna pay me for that? I would have done it all for free. And I got my card. But what was the greatest part? The week after that show aired, and I had done the announcing for them two to wrestle Akio Sato and Pat Tanaka with Mr. Fuji as their manager. A week later, Gene LaBelle calls me and says, "Hey, Bill, if you got your Screen Actors Guild card, I can use you in a movie, but you have to have your SAG card." I said, "Gene, I have my SAG card." And he says, "Well, I got a movie called Alligator 2, The Mutation, and I need you to play two parts in it. One, you're going to be a timekeeper with Count Billy Varga." How good does that get, man? I'm with an old-timer legend that I had known. Billy is a good friend. And he says, "Also, I need you to play a part of a guy sitting out in the audience. We're going to film it at the Ambassador Hotel, the same ballroom where Bobby Kennedy gave his last speech before he was assassinated." So I'm in this scene where I'm sitting at a table. It was like a ballroom with tables, and the ring is there, and there's a match between Alexis Smirnoff and I don't know. It's like Alexis Smirnoff and Professor Tanaka and Chavo Guerrero and Wildman Jack Armstrong. All these guys are in some kind of a match, and Smirnoff gets thrown out of the ring, and I catch him. I'm wearing a suit or a sport jacket on the outside of the ring, and I catch Smirnoff, and I fall down. And then when I get up, Professor Tanaka gets up and chops me, and I fall back, flip over a table, and I hit my leg on the podium of right where Bobby Kennedy gave his last speech. I hit my leg there and had a big knot on my shin. And Gene LaBelle walks up to me. He was a stunt coordinator for the movie, and he goes, "Brother, don't sell. Don't tell any of these people you're hurt." I said, "Okay, Gene, I got like a golf size ball knot on my shin." He says, "Don't sell it. Don't show any fear or any pain to these crew." I told him wrestlers are tough as nails. I said, "Okay, Gene, you got it." And what Gene did for me, I was hired to do this scene for $750. Gene went to the producer and the director, and he says, "I want this guy to get a stunt adjustment. So give him I want you to double his pay because they had to shoot the scene twice, not because of me. It was something Tanaka had done. He had moved the wrong way out of camera. So they shot the scene twice. They gave me $1,500 for the day." Are you kidding me? Again, I'd have done it for free. I'm hanging with Chavo, Jack Armstrong, Billy Varga, Gene LaBelle, Smirnoff, Tanaka, all my friends. I'd known these guys for years. I would have done it for free, and there I am being paid for it. Now, I loved Hollywood. I only did a few things, all because of Gene LaBelle or Red Bastien. It was no talent on my part. It's all in who you know. It's all that sort of thing, and it goes around. But I treated my friends good, and they treated me back good. And Gene LaBelle was a big part of my life. But that was the benefit of working for the WWF, was getting my SAG card, Gene LaBelle promoting me. So one thing goes from another, and it's like the domino effect, and it's people you meet and people you know, and because of that rig announcing I did for WWF, I don't know if you guys were at the World Peace Festival in 1990, was it 5 or 6? Six. Okay, June 1st of 96, and I got the ring announced there for most of the matches. They brought in a Hispanic announcer for a couple of their matches from Mexico. And but there I am announcing Antonio Inoki, Dan Severn, Oleg Tektarov. Uh, I mean, again, are you kidding me? And they're paying me to do this, and I loved every minute. I'm hanging with my friends. Sting was on the show, my student. We'll talk about. I know. I'm with Bam Bam Bigelow and Chris Jericho and Conan, all my friends. So I got a lot of benefits out of doing the ring announcing. It was a thrill for me. And it's so funny that was just one small aspect of my wrestling career. Was just my ring announcing. I could sit and talk to you for 2 or 3 hours on ring announcing and the things I did and funny things or this and that. But it was just one little slice of my career. So when you really, if I'm ever depressed, I look back on sometimes my career and I think, you know what, I have a hell of a lot to be happy about. I really got to do a lot, and got to meet a lot of people and made a lot of friends. Unfortunately, a lot of my friends are gone now. Uh, I could sit and name them. You'd know every name, of course, and everybody out there listening to this right now would know, from Davey Boy to Rude and Kurt Hennig. They were all dear friends of mine. Dino Bravo, I love the man. All these guys, Andre. My God, I was in the ring with Andre in a battle royal at the at the Olympic Auditorium, January of 1984, when right the first year Vince had come out. He was at the sports arena, and then I guess they were going to do some remodeling, so they went to the Olympic Auditorium for a few shows. And I'm in a battle royal with Andre and Sergeant Slaughter and Pat Patterson, Tony Garea, Mr. Fuji. All my heroes, all my friends, all my heroes. And Andre protected me that match. All the guys dogpiled on me. Mil Moskris. I was on the mat, and Andre covered me. All the guys dogpiled on top with Moskris jumping off the top rope at the very top of the pile. And gotta say, Andre protected me, and I could have been dead. Honestly, honest to God, I had I don't know, probably about 3,000 pounds of weight on me. Well, I should say on Andre's back, and thank God he protected me. And so those kind of memories, you can't buy them, man. I've got them. Thank God, all up in here. So if I ever feel low or feel like feel bad about maybe some bad health I'm having now, I think back on those great memories and I laugh. And many times I start smiling when I think back on some of the matches and some fun things that happened along the way and some great events and friends that are still alive, of course, and good memories.
You did something at a time that was so magical and was pretty new on a grand mainstream scale that no one could ever take that away from you. And it's probably something, unfortunately, most in the business now will never experience either.
Right. And, and I owe that to my friendships, because I would have never done anything with WWF if it wasn't for Mike LaBelle. And I came in to work for Mike LaBelle in 1982, who at one time had just the greatest promotion in Southern California. I watched one show at the Olympic Auditorium as a 15-year-old kid with Dory Funk Jr. defending the belt, NWA belt against Peter Maivia. And underneath that was Freddie Blassie and John Tolis and Shibuya and Saito and Gordon and Goliath and Bull Ramos and Mil Moskris. All the great stars, Paul DeMarco, all these great stars were there. So that was in 71. Well, in 82, I had gotten my chance to come in and work for Mike LaBelle. Tom Ernesto was the booker. I sent him, in those days, we had no internet. Our internet was sending things by snail mail. I sent an 8x10 picture into Tom Ernesto at the Michael Bell's wrestling office on Crenshaw Avenue in LA, and sent him an 8x10 and said, I'd love to come in and wrestle for you if you give me a shot. And I got a letter back, which I still saved in my photo album, Tom Ernesta sent me a letter and says, Bill, we're accepting you to come in August of 82. And I came in and worked for Mike from August till December when he closed down. And at that point, he sold out to Vince McMahon, sold the territory, and allowed Vince to do his dream of expansion across the country, starting in March. March of 83 was Vince's first shows in Southern California. So what Mike did for me and Jeff Walton, his publicist, Mike and Jeff recommended to Vince a group of about 10 guys that they said would be great talent for you guys, for Vince, for you to use, and Pat Patterson is the booker, for you to use as local talent to save some expenses of you guys flying out a full roster of like 24 guys all the way across country. We got guys like Jerry Monty, Jack Armstrong, Rick Drayson, Bill Anderson, Mickey Doyle, Blackboard, then Goliath, Magnificent Zulu. It's a different talent like that to save you expenses, and they'll put on a hell of a show for you. So Mike's recommendation paid off for me because I got to work with Blackjack Mulligan. Oh my God. Paul Orndorff, Adrian Adonis, all these kind of guys that, thanks to Michael Bell and Pat Patterson getting to know me and see me work. And one night, they put me over Paul Orndorff in 1984 because Paul was new coming in, and he had not signed a contract to become Mr. Wonderful and all that. And they're kind of testing him out to see what his attitude is. He's an NWA guy coming from Atlanta. So they wanted to see if he had the right stuff to take orders. Because it's not a matter of talent in the business. It's a matter of knowing how to handle yourself and being a professional. And Pat Patterson came up to me and says, we're putting you over Orndorff. There's 15,000 people out there. And Paul did exactly what he was told to do. And I certainly did what I was told to do and did it to the best of my ability. And that's the kind of faith Pat had in me and Vince had in me that meant a lot to me, and therefore I got to work with a lot of talent as a wrestler leading up to the point where I became a ring announcer for them. So, it doesn't get much better.
Absolutely. Tell us your memories of working with Paul Orndorff. Me and Kris talk about Paul a lot, and we really think the WWF kind of missed the boat with him in some aspects.
Well, I think what the problem was back in those days, and this is just me talking off the cuff here, I think they had such an extreme amount of talent that it was hard to push all the guys. I mean, I look back on even guys, before we talk about Orndorff, guys even down to Paul Roma or Jimmy Powers. They would have been main events in any territory, except when you got them in WWF, they're like opening match. And Lanny Poffo, too. Because what are you going to do? Everybody can't win the Battle Royal, and everybody can't be in the main event. As a promoter, I went through hell trying to teach people that, my wrestlers on the show, 20 guys on a show, you all can't win. You all can't be in the last match. You all can't be the winner of the Battle Royal. Somebody's the first eliminated, somebody's second, and on and on and on. So I think the roster was deep. You know, Hercules, all these kind of guys, Hercules Hernandez, all these guys, John Tenta, man, oh my God. They were all main eventers to me, in my mind. They all deserve a top spot. John Studd, of course, he usually got a top spot because of his size, and Andre, of course. But Orndorff was lost in the shuffle of a lot of these guys. I mean, he was in the first WrestleMania, obviously, in the main event with Piper and Mr. T and that kind of thing. But Orndorff, I wrestled him several times for WWF and for Herb Abrams' UWF in 90. But in 84, 83 and 84, I wrestled Orndorff. And he was a solid worker, very respectful in the ring, very professional, solid as a rock. There was no error in between his headlock. When he gripped you, you knew it. And you wouldn't have wanted it any other way. He was a solid worker. When he hit you, you felt it, but he didn't kill you. And he was convincing to the crowd. He had a body like gold. I would have given my right arm to have looked as good as Paul Orndorff. I didn't have the discipline to work out in the gym like Paul did. And, he was a great worker. And another one that we've lost, just a couple years ago. And I was very saddened by that. I saw Paul at the Cauliflower Alley Club in Las Vegas before he passed, and got to talk to him. And, and just a tremendous worker and a good guy.
Now, another guy I want to ask you about who, because we've heard Paul Orndorff is one of the guys in the professional wrestling business. Another one we hear a lot about is Ravishing Rick Rude. People have, along the way told some interesting stories about Rick Rude. What were your interactions like with Rick?
I didn't have any violent interactions, but no, I can just tell you I admired and respected Rick. I've said it very often. For his physique and everything, I think he had one of the best gimmicks in the business at the time, of his opening thing, coming in and grabbing the mic and talking, for all you fan, blah, blah, blah people. And it was beautiful. And Rick's arrogance could handle it just perfect. Tell you real fast a funny thing I did. I played a rib on Louis Spicoli once. We were in Bakersfield. This is, I don't even know what year. 1988 or 89, I don't even know. And we were at the Bakersfield Civic Auditorium where WWF would do their house show there. And there were some steps you walk up to that went into the dressing room from the back door. And Spicoli was standing right at the back door. And I'd walked up these steps, and I saw at the end of the hall Rick Rude, and he was sitting out in the hall with a chair, and he was putting his boots on. This is earlier. This is like way earlier from the show. I'm surprised he was there that early. I waved at Rick, and Spicoli didn't see me wave at him and everything. So I start walking down the stairs, and Spicoli says, "Hey, Bill, is anybody here yet?" I says, "Just Rude." And he goes, "Well, you just call him by his last name." And I go, I step back up to the top. I says, "Hey, Rick, come here." And Spicoli was like, "Man, you're getting awfully aggressive there, And all of a sudden, Rude comes in the frame, and he goes, "Yeah." And I go, "How you doing, Rick?" And I shake his hand, and Spicoli was like worried that Rick was going to just nail me because I was treating him a little rough. But Rick treated me great. Rick was a hell of a guy. But I always heard how tough Rick was. All those Minneapolis guys, that came from there, Nikita Koloff, the Road Warriors, Kurt Hennig. I wouldn't have messed with any of them guys, man. They were all bouncers in bars together, and they were all tough guys. And I treated everybody with respect. I had no reason to ever, see firsthand a lot of things, how tough somebody was. So I didn't see Rude interact with anybody, getting tough with them, but I just took everybody's word that he was. But I will tell you, I did have interaction with Adrian Adonis, and in 1983, I was wrestling him in San Diego, April of '83, and it's a house show, and Adrian hits me in a low blow. He's down on his knees. I kicked Adrian in the stomach, not a potato. Kicked him. He went down to his knees, and as he was down on his knees, he came up with an uppercut. He came up with an uppercut and hit me in the mouth and just busted me open. And still, I got 27 stitches and a scar. It goes inside and outside my lip. And as I was selling, he came up and kicked me between the legs, shoot kick. So I don't know what to hold and what to sell. I rolled out of the ring. That was my natural first inclination because I had to feel if I had any teeth left. I couldn't. It was all numb. All this was numb. So I didn't know if he knocked all my front teeth out. I roll out to the floor, and all the fans are yelling, "Fake, fake!" We're in like the third match of the show. Nobody's bleeding in the third match of a show. So they're yelling fake. Meanwhile, the blood is just pouring out like a, drops coming out of my mouth. And get back in the ring, and Adrian finishes me with whatever his move was he did. I don't know, it was a top rope, something. So anyway, I get back, and I'm walking back through the curtain, and Michael Bell is standing there. He was still like a road agent for Vince in the early days of expansion. Michael Bell is standing there, and he goes, "What did you do to Keith?" And I go, "What did I do?" I'm sitting there with my mouth busted open. And he said, "You better get that looked at." And so I ended up being at a hospital until 3 in the morning and had to have a plastic surgeon come in and stitch me up, and did a hell of a job stitching me up. And I found out later that Adrian was high on coke and drunk. I didn't know it. But in those days, it was a loose dressing room in the 80s. They didn't care if guys carried a case of beer in, 6-pack in. It was like, as long as you show up, you're there. That's just the way the business was. It was still a carryover from the old days of the 50s and 60s and 70s. You could just do that kind of stuff. So I found out that he but the next day I was at the LA Sports Arena, and I had a house show work against Alexis Smirnoff, and Alexis took care of me. And, I didn't want to miss my payoff. I was an independent worker. I was getting like 4 or 5 shows a month from WWF in those days to wrestle, getting paid anywhere from $200 to $400 a night. So that was a big supplement to my income. So I wasn't going to miss the next night, no matter how swollen my face was. My lip was so swollen, I looked like Cher on the lips. It was all the way up to my nose. My lip was. And I wrestled Alexis, but I wanted my $400 payoff the next night. And those are things that just happened in the business. I didn't do anything to cause it, but it sure as hell wasn't going to stop me from continuing my dream. It's all part of the business. I knew it was a tough business when I got into it. And sometimes you're going to meet some asses along the way, and there's people that do bad things. Mm-hmm. Adrian, years later, apologized to me. I saw Adrian 4 or 5 months before he passed away in Canada in that car accident. Adrian was in LA. He lived in Bakersfield. He was down in LA auditioning for a 7-Up commercial or Mountain Dew commercial or something, and I was too. Professor Tanaka was there. All kinds of wrestlers were there. They were looking for some big guys for a commercial, and Adrian was there, and he was straight as an arrow. Man, and he told me, he says, "Man, he says, I look back on those days years ago, man, I was drinking and doing a lot of drugs." He said, "Man, I'm clean." He says, "I'm trying to drop weight now. I'm trying to come back and work for Vince. Vince is supposed to take me back in the fall." This was, he died in July of '88. This would have been probably in February or March of '88. And he says, "I'm going to come back in the fall. I'm going to have lost more weight. And, man, I'm looking forward to a good run, make some more money for my family." And then he died in that car accident. And the thing is, I went to Adrian's grave. He's buried in Bakersfield. I went to his grave a couple years ago, and I did a video at his grave, and I thanked Adrian, and I not only thanked him for working with me and teaching me a lot, the good and bad, teaching me, but I also forgave him, and it said it. I forgive you for what you did to me and scarred me for life and caused me some pain. But it's all part of the business. But I wanted him to know, whatever afterlife there is, that I forgave him, and that I was honored to be a co-worker of his. But this is just some of the things you go through in the wrestling business. And there's some of the things you just have to deal with to move on and prosper and learn from. So I hope I answered your question. I kind of ramble on.
No. You told a great story too, and we've heard a lot about Adrian Adonis and how he could be hit or
Oh,
miss.
yeah. Well, obviously, you guys know with the Dan Spivey and story. I wasn't around to see that. In fact, I didn't even hear that story until many years where he kind of put Adrian in his place. And I did a lot of shows with Dan Spivey for WWF and for Herb Abrams UWF. Uh, I never would have known Dan Spivey was that tough. But then again, I'm not a tough guy, so I wasn't the kind to walk up and tell him or Dr. Death Steve Williams, hey, you know what? You want to take me on? That's not my thing. I'm not a shooter. I'm not a UFC guy. I took my bumps in the ring, and it wasn't to be punched as a punching bag. But Adrian learned a lesson from Dan Spivey. I would have loved to have seen that. You know,
Can you talk, Bill, a little bit about the sports arena, like how so you came in '87, the Z Channel came in '88, early '88. My first show I went to was October 16th, '88 at the sports arena. Z Channel was that was where Hogan and Haku. Hogan had that helmet, and
the Trojan,
the
Trojan helmet.
Trojan helmet. They tried
I
pushing that,
remember.
didn't go anywhere, but and then yeah, the last match, main event, was, like you said, unbelievable. Jake and Rude, just good stuff.
Oh, what a feud that was!
Yeah,
What a
yeah,
natural feud that was with Jake's wife and Elizabeth. Oh my God! And Rude, the perfect heel, and Randy, the perfect maniac. For real, I mean, you didn't know if Randy was where his head was at. And I love Randy, and I loved
or
him then, and I love him now. Oh, I mean, yeah, I'm sorry, Jake. I mean, Jake. Well, Jake was just as bad as Randy. Jake, you never knew too. Jake was a wild man in those days, but what a feud! I mean, the most natural feud you could have with Jake and the Snake, and Rude putting his wife's face on his tights. Oh my God, how insulting is that?
yeah.
And I mean, but the fans loved it. It was a beautiful feud. And again, I don't think any two guys could have done it better than Jake. Because Jake was another wrestler that should have been a main eventer every night of his career.
Yeah.
The psychology of Jake, he knew how to work a crowd. He knew it all. The added benefit of a snake, he knew how to work that too. And I wrestled Jake at least 15 times through my life, at churches in the 90s, through TV tapings in the 90s for Vince, or house shows in the 80s for Vince, working against Jake. He was a pretty weird guy and crazy in his own right, but he knew the business.
Can I ask you, Bill? Can I ask you? Hate to do this while we're live, but can you try taking your ear pod out and doing a speaker, because it might be having some feedback? Do you have a speakerphone or a speaker on your computer that you can put on instead of your earpiece?
I'm not sure I'm talented enough.
Okay, if not, don't worry about it. Oh, or he might have to log back on.
Yeah.
You there, Eric?
Yes, I am.
Okay. I don't know if you were getting that feedback, but there was
sounded okay, but I know at one point he was tinkering with something when you told him, and I could hear a little bit of feedback at that point.
Yeah, we're getting. I want to just tell once again, fans, thank you for joining us. If you were hearing that feedback when he was talking, like we were, but he'll probably log back on. But yeah, so far, what an amazing interview.
Yeah.
I mean, going down memory lane, and yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing more about all that stuff at the sports arena, which I'm sure a lot of you fans watching, if you remember those days, then you definitely remember Bill Anderson in the ring there. and yeah, so and that tenure lasted quite a while, up until pretty much when the WWF left the sports arena in the early 90s, somewhere around there.
Absolutely. And boy, he's done so much in his career. Like he said, the WWF was just a small sliver of it. He went to FMW in Japan. He worked all over Mexico. He, helped assist in the training of Sting and the Ultimate Warrior, two huge stars of the, 90s.
Yeah, two guys that were the head honchos of their respective promotions, and then tagged up before that. So it's kind of ironic that he was there for both those guys when they were coming up. And yeah, the rest is history, of course, with Sting and Warrior. But yeah, I want to ask him a little bit more about the sports arena, and then we can get into his career and all the questions you have, Eric. And I know that includes Japan, that includes Mexico, that includes, again, UWF. So yeah, he's done it all, and pretty interesting how he got into the business. He was just wearing that tie, and I have a similar story with my career, where I was wearing a suit, and that kind of interesting parallels there. But yeah, and it was interesting how Strongbow just selected him and didn't even know that he had ring announcing experience.
Absolutely. I mean, you know what? It's paying your dues. Everyone's got their own unique way how they break into the business. And, it's great knowing many different hats in the wrestling business because it could open up many different doors for you.
Yeah, that was a nice story with Adrian Adonis, how he went to his grave and all that. And yeah, I can definitely attest for that. There are always bad apples in any business that you're going to run into. And they seem, when you have a bad apple or a bad egg in the batch, at times it can make it seem like the whole batch is bad. But it because that bad apple stands out so much, and you kind of don't notice all the good apples around it. And that's a good thing to kind of share, because it's so easy to get disenfranchised, disillusioned when you have to deal with something like that. But it's the truth. It's like there's only a few usually, and there's a lot of good people in this business. And sometimes you don't see that when you're so that one bad apple.
Absolutely. And it's an interesting story.
Yeah, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Go ahead, please.
Yeah. No. I was just saying too. It's just very interesting because back then he said too. It's like if you missed the town, you didn't get paid.
Yeah, and just the injury. He's. Yeah, and the injury, just that massive injury. But he said, "Hey, man, I'm not risking my $400 payday." And hey, even today, if you had to skip out on $400, even today, that would suck, So you can imagine in the early '80s how much whatever inflation equates to what $400 would be today, probably over $1,000,
Oh, very easily.
Yeah. Well, we are connecting with our producer right now, trying to get Bill back on here, and usually just those mic issues don't log us off, so I don't know what happened, but hopefully we'll get him back on here soon. And again, since we have this moment, we want to invite all you fans to comment down below if you have any questions you want us to ask Bill Anderson or any of our guests here on the Wrestling with Reality podcast. And again, go ahead and like, share, comment, and subscribe to this channel. You can archive all of our past interviews that we have on this channel. I'm sure you will enjoy them if you're enjoying this one. And I guess we could take this time for all your vaping needs. Go to Vape Siggy in Canoga Park, California, right there on Sherman Way. Guy's name is Steve. He'll hook you up with a discount. Tell him the Wrestling with Reality podcast sent you. Smoke shop, vape shop, and all sorts of trinkets in there. Vape Siggy, VAPECIGGY in Canoga Park, California. Look him up and tell him we sent you. And he'll give you a discount, and you'll get a stamp card too. But yeah, man, there's so many questions. I'm sure we'll get him back on here.
Yeah, we will. You know what? Honestly, I have a feeling we're going to have to do a part 2 with Bill already. I kind of there's so much to go over with.
Yeah, especially if we don't get him on in time right now. I mean, we're almost an hour in, so that's not a problem. And yeah, and then maybe now this will, for those of you who are just watching this episode now, if we do a part 2 instead of continue on right now, please, fans, this is your opportunity. Hit us down in the comment section, even on this video. If this one when it's on YouTube, hit us down in the comment section of what you wish we would have asked on the first round here, and what you would like us to ask him leading in to the second half of this interview, whether it's right now when we continue or if we do a part 2. And part 2, again, might not be that bad of an idea since we're 51 plus minutes in already and coming up to that 1 hour mark. But yeah, great stuff, man. This guy, we talked about it off the air. He and I kind of met. And when XPW first started at the Reseda Country Club, the first time I met Jesse Hernandez, Bill Anderson, they were at the show at the Reseda 99. And I want to say this is when he was kind of at the bookend of his career, and I was at the book start of my career. And there he is, according to Woods. And then we got Bill Anderson. Oh, hey, Billy, can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay. Hit the camera icon right below your video. It says camera. There you go. All right.
Oh my God, we almost went to a 20-minute Broadway there.
All right. Well,
I'm sorry.
Please don't apologize.
If you're, I don't know what happened, but your earpiece, if we can't do it, if you can't do a speaker, don't worry about it. We'll just keep going.
I'm only trying to remember how.
Sorry.
I'm afraid every time I touch something, it becomes a catastrophe.
Oh, then don't worry about
but
it.
But now I'm hearing the echo. I didn't hear it before.
Yeah, sometimes when people have the earpieces in, that does the echo. But if you just go from the speaker of your device, that's better.
Or should I?
Hey, now?
Yeah, can you go ahead, talk?
Oh, wait.
Go ahead.
Wait. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
That's better.
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's better.
I can live with it.
Okay. Well, yeah, it's fine either way.
I'm really sorry.
No problem. No problem. Yeah. We're good to have you back. We just kind of were talking to all the people out there right now to go ahead and give us some comments, ask them whatever questions they want us to ask you. And we're just kind of recapping the first part of the episode here. Just to piggyback before we get into other stuff, Eric, before we leave the LA Sports Arena, and I was talking, Bill, when you and I met in '99 at the Reseda Country Club, I was just that was the beginning of my career. And I know the sport arena was kind of a thing of the past at that point. I know you weren't doing much playing at that point. So we kind of crossed paths right there. At Sports Arena, when I would go to my first shows and all that, can you kind of talk about the difference, what it was like when you started in '87, and then when the Z channel came in. Now, what do you know the business model? Because I remember my grandparents, they had the Z channel, and I would kick myself because I didn't even know that the WWF shows were on there. I would have had all those on VHS, recorded. But I know Madison Square Garden Network, the Spectrum Network, Maple Leaf Gardens, the Boston Gardens Network, and all that back east. And that seemed like a similar thing. All those are pretty much on the WWE Peacock network now. Those old sports arena shows that you can watch. But I remember the difference as a fan and even when XPW, we went into the sports arena, they would just have the in-house scoreboard come down, and you have those lights underneath the scoreboard that were already into the arena, basically. But when the Z channel came in, they brought in those TV taping lights, and it looked so much better. It didn't quite look like Superstars, Challenge, or Saturday Night's Main Event taping, but it did look better than when the sports arena had those blue lights underneath the scoreboard, if you remember. And it looked like those blue street lights you see out on the street. It just looked so dark and different. But when the Z channel came in, it wasn't quite a TV taping. It was still a house show, but man, it looked a little bit. It felt like it was somewhere in between a taping and a house show, somewhere in between.
Yeah, I just remember those shows when they aired. They looked so professional, and it was just that house show from beginning to end, a complete show from opening match leading up to the main event, the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
Kind of showing you the progression of good matches on up. That at the time it was just part of my monthly shows. Whether it was Z Channel or I was doing house show announcing other house shows, it made no difference to me personally, because the only difference was I had to have a cue from a director obviously off camera saying, and he would go to Gorilla, where Gorilla would go to me then, and that was the only difference. Otherwise, it was up to me to kind of lead the show a little bit as the announcer. So it was different.
Did that make it easier when it was a Z channel model, when they would tell you, or was it easier just you doing it?
It felt more professional, I guess, because I ended up doing the same thing when I worked for the AWF in Chicago and in Tampa for the Paul Alperstein's American Wrestling Federation in the mid-'90s. It was the same thing. I had to take a cue from Terry Taylor or Mick Karch, one of those kind of guys, to tell me, now to our ring announcer, Bill Anderson. And it was when I did Ladies Professional Wrestling Association ring announcing in Laughlin in 1990 for the all-women's group, and Joe Pedicino would be there. Now up to our ring announcer, Bill Anderson, and Jim Cornette was with him. So I think it's easier, or it's more professional to be led, to tell when you're supposed to talk. And I think the fans can appreciate it too. So, yeah, it just works.
Do you remember what happened? Why Z Channel stopped doing the shows?
No, I didn't understand any of the agreement there. I just remember they taped, I think it was 6, if not complete house shows that aired. And I have them all on VHS too in my storage room in Phoenix somewhere. And I don't know why they quit. I don't know what the contract was, if they were just throwing it out. I don't know what Vince bought the time, or the station was paying Vince, or any of that stuff. The inner workings I had no knowledge of.
And that was done in '89, and then they went kind of back. Do you remember the look changing? Do you remember that, the look of the arena changed with the lights came out, right? Remember that?
Yeah, vaguely I remember. I just remember I loved at the beginning of the shows because they did the far off camera, and I was just standing as a either I wasn't in the ring or I was in the ring, just a blip of a guy, because the camera was all the way up in the stands, looking down, and I thought it had a cool look to it. And as a ring announcer, I just thought it was real professional the way it was done. As opposed to when I did other announcing for other promotions, and the camera was literally on the apron of the ring, and it's like, now up to a ring announcer, and I'm right there 5 feet away. It doesn't look as good.
Do you have? You say you have the Z channel. I know they have those available, whether on streaming or you could have on tape from the original Z channel. Do you have any of them on tape? Just the regular house shows when the Z channel was there? Did they ever have tapes of those?
You mean without the Z channel?
Yeah.
No. Nobody was allowed to really videotape in those days.
Right.
Because that was part of my announcing, no videography and all that stuff at the beginning without the express written permission from the World Wrestling Federation. None of that was really allowed those days. Even flash cameras and everything. They were real particular. Chief J. Strongbow is a float agent most of those shows. He'd send security and police out, talk to crowds, holding signs even too, and have you removed or have you stop doing whatever you were doing.
Wow.
If it looked like it was interrupting the show and the flow.
Do you? I remember the first show I was at. You weren't there. Were you there in the building for WrestleMania 7?
Yeah, that's the one where Randy Savage wrestled Warrior.
Yeah, Hogan Slaughter and all that.
I was backstage. I carried Randy out on his throne. I carried him and Sherry out.
Okay.
Yeah, I was brought in. They paid me to bring, I think, 5 other guys besides myself. They paid us, but they paid me to bring out guys to my wrestling school to carry the throne to the ring. So I brought in Louis Spicoli and a few of my other guys. I can't remember all their names, honestly, right now. But I brought in 5 guys besides myself, and we got paid $200-300 to carry Randy and Sherry. So it was a good payday. It was a lot of fun because that was where I got to meet Donald Trump, my man Donald Trump, and got to meet Regis Philbin and whoever, Willie Nelson, all the celebs that were there. So it was a lot of fun.
Did you think at all like, because they're in LA, I might be ring announcing, or did you kind of know it was going to be the Fink and all that?
Oh, I kind of knew on a pay-per-view that big. I didn't even have a thought of being the ring announcer. No letdown at all. Right. I honestly felt more relief when I saw, when I knew Howard was coming out and it was his baby, not mine. That's a lot of pressure doing a pay-per-view. And I was very happy to turn the reins over to a more qualified man like Howard.
Yeah.
Because you make a mistake on a pay-per-view. I'm lucky. I have to say I made very few mistakes during my ring announcing. But when you make a mistake live, it's a big one. And if you make it on pay-per-view, it's really big. I got to tell you, I have to knock my own self once. I was in Reno doing the ring announcing, and it was at the very beginning when Acid Smash started with working for Vince, and they were doing singles matches. And like a fool, I introduced them backwards. I introduced Bill Eadie as Smash, and I introduced Axe as Barry Darso in single matches because I was out at the ring the whole time, and I made a big blunder. And when I got back, Barry never said anything to me, but Bill Eadie did. Bill says, "I can't believe you can't tell us apart." And he was so right. It was a bad mistake on my part. And that's honestly one of the very few mistakes I ever made that I can recall as a ring announcer. And it was a big one, but it was at a house show at least, where it wasn't on TV or something. But it was enough where I was embarrassed to the boys, that I shouldn't have done that, and I should have known better.
Were you privy at all to and I can share this story, but when XPW went into the sports arena, we had a walkthrough with the Sports Arena Coliseum Commission. We were looking at the venue and all that, and that was surreal to me. That was in 2000 or maybe late 99, but I think it was 2000. But I remember asking the Sports Arena Commission about why, the real reason as to why they moved WrestleMania 7 from the Coliseum to the sports arena. Were you privy to that? Because I actually got.
I wasn't.
Okay.
I wasn't privy to the reason, other than my common sense was that having a half-empty building or a
Right.
2/3 empty Coliseum would have been more embarrassing. That's my gut feeling.
Well,
I think Vince said it was because of the terrorism.
Right. No.
Or something going on. Was it because of the Slaughter Sheik feud?
Well, that's what I asked the commission before I even finished asking him that question. And he could tell he was older. He'd been there for years, the head of the commission. And we're actually going down the stairs. I remember or maybe it was an escalator at the sports.
Yeah. Backstage there, that escalator on the wall.
Yeah. And I was like in the middle of asking, oh, hey, do you remember back in 91 WrestleMania 7? How come they moved before I even finished asking? He's like, oh, no. They didn't want it empty. They couldn't sell tickets, so they came in here.
I think that's the truth. But
yeah,
my God, I don't think it's too embarrassing to say that.
No, and also, I forgot. I'm blanking now. But if they were there, I think. When they went to WrestleMania 4 and 5, that was from Plaza, regular sized. I think those were kind of wasted WrestleManias as far as you could have. It was still hot at that time. You could have put a stadium there and maybe saved 7 for a smaller place. But yeah, no, I remember getting that. Okay, but I always had that gut feeling too. And who knows, had they got Flair, let's say a year earlier, than they did, and hyped that up to 7 Hogan Flair, maybe they would have had a shot selling the Coliseum out then. Maybe.
Well, that's possible. Let me tell you, there was a lot of. I can tell you this for a fact. They totally misused Ric Flair when he came in, and I saw part of it because I did a house show in Hawaii, in Honolulu, at the Blaisdell Arena. And 1 month I was advertising the return show during, before intermission, like, ladies and gentlemen, the World Wrestling Federation returns to the Blaisdell Arena next month on the date. And on that exciting card, you will see the Nature Boy, Ric Flair. And I made it as big as I could make it. I got yelled at in the dressing room, yelled at by Chief Jay Strongbow, saying, what in the hell are you pushing this guy for? He's just another guy on the show. Don't be pushing him bigger than our talent, our regular talent. And I was using it from the Mark standpoint of, this is great. You're bringing in Ric Flair to the WWF. Don't treat it like he's bringing in Steve Lombardi.
Yeah.
I hesitated. Gave it the pause. The Nature Boy in the pot, the crowd popped. They for it. And I got yelled at. And that told me all I needed to know, that in real time backstage and in Vince's office, they were downplaying the importance of Ric Flair coming in.
Yeah.
And if they did that to me as a ring announcer, they were doing it to every ring announcer in the country at the time that were announcing on the next month that Ric Flair would be on that card in Portland or Denver or Seattle or Atlanta or wherever. So I just think they misused opportunities to build him bigger and bigger than he already was.
Yeah.
That's just my personal feeling.
Yeah, I agree with that, and especially how when they did bring him in, they immediately put Hogan and Flair together on house shows, and my goodness, the way they promote matches today, where it's a year out, no big deal. Now, okay, we're gonna fight next year's WrestleMania. It's like they could have easily done that, and then the fact that they dropped the WrestleMania 8 was like, you look back on it now. I agree. It's more of a thing you didn't maybe see, you saw it, but it wasn't more of a thing we saw at the time that you could see now. That they want to promote anything WWF over WCW, even if we have those WCW guys to make.
Yeah, it was exactly just like Vince did with ECW. It's the same thing. Although I can't compare Taz or any of them guys to Ric Flair, but it was no different. Vince was going to treat them all like backyard wrestlers in his own way, in his demeaning way that Vince had of a put down, because Vince was the ultimate professional promoter to know how to put you down without you looking like you were put down. And Vince knew how to do it. And
we saw that at WrestleMania 31. And I was up there when Sting came out, deal, but then boom, he loses to Triple H, and then like nothing. And now after that happens, okay, now you look back in retrospect, okay, that's what happened with Flair. Same treatment, and
right.
And now, yeah. And so in retrospect, it could have been bigger and better. One more question about WrestleMania 7. In the dark match, Steve Lombardi, Brooklyn Brawler was Coco Beware. They had ring announcer Mel Phillips just for that one match, and then they went on the air, and then it was Howard Finkel for the rest of WrestleMania 7. Do you have any idea why they would have done that? Just brought in for that one match? Okay.
I honestly don't even remember that. No reason, unless they were trying to make Howard look more spectacular to the crowd as the man, and not a preliminary announcer, main event announcer type thing. Live pay-per-view. That would be my only feeling on it.
Do you remember when your last show was? I mean, the Sports Arena, they stopped doing that because they started doing shows at the Arrowhead Pond. They kind of replaced in about 93. And I remember it was around May or June of 93. Yokozuna, Hacksaw, was Giant Gonzalez, Macho Man, and that was the last Sports Arena show. And then you were at the Pond after that, right?
Yeah. I don't remember my last show with them. I just remember when the phone stopped ringing or the booking sheet stopped coming. And what was really happening was Vince wanted to use his TV announcers as house show announcers whenever possible. To him, it gave him more credibility having Tony Kimmel or whatever announcer it was be at the house show as opposed to as a local announcer. That was my best idea on the whole thing. I know my last event I ever worked for Vince was in 1999 at Royal Rumble in Anaheim. I was brought in with 5 other guys to be orderlies to take Kane out of the ring during the Royal Rumble. We were sent in from the mental institution. And we were to bring Kane in, and he talked everybody around except me. I think we were smart. We stayed on the floor because I was getting paid the same not to take a bump with Kane, so I stayed on the floor. And then Kane chased us all back out of the arena, or out of the main floor of the arena to the dressing room. But that was my last show. Was that I ever worked for Vince? Was in '99.
Okay.
Not as an announcer, obviously, but I had I had been used as well as they guess they could use me at the time. And, you know, life goes on. There's a point where everybody has their time, and then the phone just stops ringing. And that's the way it is. And you move on in your life.
Yeah. Do you remember doing that show, like the one show they did at the Forum in like 94, 95? I think they did a show at the Forum. I think it was 94, 95.
I was a referee on a show at the Forum, if that's the one you're talking about. The main event was Hogan and Stud.
Oh, I think it was before that then. I'm talking 90s. I think in era, correct me if I'm. Yeah, it was like the new generation era. It was 94, 95. It's like Shawn Michaels and Jeff Jarrett went at it. I can't remember who else.
I personally, I cannot remember if I was even there. I did a lot of shows that aren't in memory. I did a lot that I do remember. I remember one show in particular at the Sports Arena, and that was Hogan against Stud. Because Stud body slam, I was a referee, but Stud body slammed me on that show. And Heenan was there, and I remember that. Only because Mr. T was backstage. This was, I think, all leading up to WrestleMania. It was so many years ago. You know, you're talking 30 years ago or 40 years ago. What am I saying?
And going back to Hogan Flair, October 26th of 91, you were there. You did that show, the Hogan Flair show at the Sports Arena?
Oh, I'm sure I did. I honestly don't remember, but I did. I was there. Because that was my era of time span. I think they used me around 93 or something. And then they, like I say, then the phone just stops ringing. But let me tell you, part of the reason for that is when Terry Garvin was a part of WWE and still alive before he got fired, Terry Garvin took care of the wrestler turned referee turned ring announcer kind of guys like me. Terry Garvin was in charge of transportation for Vince. That was his job title. And Terry would call me and book me for a lot of shows as a wrestler, referee, ring announcer, whatever they were lacking in any part of the western half of the country, from the Mississippi River on over, Terry would call because he knew wrestlers needed to be taken care of more so than, I don't know, than other people. That was Terry's prejudice toward the business was taking care of the wrestlers. And like Jerry Valiant, who was the Stomper in Detroit, was another guy in charge of a ring crew. I was in charge of a ring crew on the West Coast. Terry was sure that those guys got taken care of and paid well for their job and give them as many bookings as he could give them. So Terry ended up losing his job, and Steve Taylor came in to take his position in WWF. He was a former photographer. Steve Taylor did not like me for whatever reason. I don't know. I think he resented old wrestlers or ex-wrestlers doing that job. He liked some skinny guy, like 120 pounds in a tuxedo doing ring announcing, not some 250-pound guy in a tuxedo doing ring announcing. And that led to all of this house show stuff where Tony Chimmel and others would come in that were more known as referees or ring announcers. And Steve wanted to get rid of the wrestler turned ring announcer for whatever reason. And I was part of that. And, you know, again, whatever. You know, it is what it is, and you live with it.
Yeah, you worked a very long time. You worked the 80s and a good part of the 90s for the WWF. And I believe...
Right. And it wasn't my only job. You know, like I was telling you earlier, I was working for a dozen or 2 dozen promotions. I was working for Liam Maivia in Hawaii as a wrestler. I was working every week in Tijuana or Mexicali. or in the mid 80s when the Mexico City wrestling, or in the 90s, 91, 92, 93, I was booked on 5 one-month tours for FMW in Japan. So I was busy in my own right, doing a lot of my own stuff. So, okay, if the phone don't ring for one promotion, I just fell back on the other ones. I didn't work a regular job. I wrestled and earned my money in the wrestling business.
Wow.
And I was proud to be a part of any show under any conditions, whether I was ring crew or any of the other jobs that fell into that category. It's like working on a movie. If you were working in Hollywood, I didn't need to be the main event or main star of a movie. I'd have been just as happy working the camera behind the scenes or working the boom operator behind the scenes just to be a part of it, because it's the passion and the love for the business. My love was not as a wrestler. My love was the business. And that's the way I looked at it. So I didn't feel downgraded or anything when I became a ring announcer, or somebody says, I can only use you as a referee, or I need somebody just to book the talent and help out with the talent. Fine, you're going to pay me. That's cool. I don't need to pay in the ring. I don't. So, that's the way I looked at it, for the good and bad of it. And let me just say one more thing on that topic while I'm thinking of it. This is the one mistake I did make. As I've retired, I realized that a lot of people across the country don't know who Bill Anderson is, because I had at different times a regional name and for different promotions. Other times I'm looking under a mask. All my tours of Japan was under a mask, under 3 different names for 5 tours. I was either the Mercenary, I was Starman, or the Psycho. I worked in Mexico as the Mercenary with Tim Patterson and Luis Capoli. I worked all kinds of independents as Starman. I worked from 87 to 93. I worked WWF TV tapings as the Black Knight or the White Shadow. Again, they didn't want me to use Bill Anderson without a mask because I was the house show ring announcer in LA. So they didn't want the fans to be yelling, you wrestle on TV and that kind of thing. They had to separate.
Yeah.
But when I retire, my name loses a lot of value because of all the shows people saw me on but didn't even know it was me. So they don't look at me as like Steve Lombardi, who used a couple of different names.
Right.
Hey, that's a Brooklyn Brawler. That's Steve Lombardi. Bill Anderson, they can go, that's the Black Knight, that's the White Shadow, that's Starman, that's the Mercenary. I had so many different names, I lost the value of my name to when I kind of retired and got out of the business. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Well, let's talk about, Kris a few minutes ago brought up Sting. Talk about your assistance in training Sting in the Ultimate Warrior back in the mid-'80s.
Okay. It was probably August of 1985. I was living in Phoenix here at the time where I'm living now. And I was kind of going through a divorce. And I had loved California, as I told you earlier. I called Red Bastine, who was still working as a road agent for WWF. When I was still working wrestling for them, I would just fly over and do a house show in LA, the sports arena, or fly to Bakersfield or fly to San Diego. But I called Red and I says, Red, I'm going to move back to Southern California, but I got no place to go. Can you recommend somewhere for me to come and live for a while? He says, Billy, I've got a huge 1-bedroom apartment. Coincidentally, I got 2 big twin beds in my apartment. You're welcome to one of those. And I need a favor from you. And I says, what's the favor? You got it, Red. Red was like my adopted father. I love Red. I said, what do you need? He says, well, I'm going to open up a training camp. I got 6 huge men. Need training. 4 of them are from a man named Rick Bass. He's recommending to get trained, and they're his boys. And then there's 2 other guys. There's going to be 6. They're all big. They're bigger than you. I was 6'2", 225 pounds at the time. He says, you're going to be the smaller one of the group. I said, okay, whatever you need. And he says, I can't get in the ring and train them like I want because I've got artificial hips. I gotta have some help. A young guy, I was 28 years old at the time, 29. I was in the prime of my wrestling career. And so I moved back to LA, moved in with Red, and we started training these guys. 6 guys. They were Garland Donahoe, Mark Miller. These are all bodybuilders, weightlifters. Jim Hellwig, who became the Ultimate Warrior, obviously, and Steve Borden, who became Sting. And there was 2 other guys. There was Wrangler Steve DeSalvo and a man named Angel of Death, Dave Sheldon. Dave Sheldon, who was 6'7", huge man. So I had these 6 guys to train in the ring with Red on the floor, me in the ring doing all the bumps for them, showing them all the moves. And Red says, we're going to run this camp 6 days a week, 6 hours a day. It's intense, but I got to make this fast and get the most out of these guys that I can to make my money and just train them as quickly, make them work hard in the ring, learn their craft fast, and this is the way it is, and you're going to be the main guy. I says, Rick, didn't think twice, didn't say anything, you got it. Never paid a dime for it. I didn't get paid to train them. I did it all for free for Red. Again, it's the passion for the business. It was my love of Red Bastien, who was like a father figure to me. Never made a dime off of them guys. Never was paid a dime. Given free rent to Red Bastien, and I was accepting of that. Maybe I'm a fool. Maybe I'm not. But I did that. I have no regrets to this day. So I got in the ring and showed these guys everything I could show them. Some were better runners than others, which I know we're going to get to. The big question is, why was Warrior not as good as Sting? That I get from every interview, and I'm putting you guys off before you even say anything, because I know you're going to say Warrior didn't perform quite as good as Sting, but Warrior had his own gimmick that Vince and Pat Patterson gave him. He performed exactly like he was told to perform. If he would have done headlock takedowns or flying head scissors, he would have got chewed out in the dressing room. His gimmick was just as you saw it. Running to the rope, clotheslines, doing it fast, and being the ultimate warrior. Quick and easy in the ring. That was his style. That wasn't him. That was what he was given by the boss. And Sting was given a different routine. He was a wrestler. He was a natural athlete. I've said it 100 times in 100 interviews. Steve Borden could have been a professional athlete in any sport he chose. He could have been a pro football player. He could have been a pro basketball player with that leaping ability. He could have dunked basketballs. He was 6'3", 6'4", whatever. He could have done it any sport he chose. He chose wrestling and obviously made it quite successful. All the guys were gifted athletes. A couple of the guys didn't make it in the business. They kind of faded. That being Mark Miller and Garland Donahoe. But the guys were trained hard and fast, and they did the drills. They did it all. And finally, what kind of ended Warrior and Sting's training was they got impatient with life. They were in their prime of life and health. They were poor as anything. Rick Bassman was financing them, giving them a house to stay, doing everything he could. He had a dream. Rick had a dream of promoting these 4 guys: Garland Donahoe, Miller, Steve and Jim, promoting them as Power Team USA, wearing red, white, and blue, coming into a territory as four-man team. You guys know as well as I do, in the mid-'80s, that was impossible. Rick didn't know. Rick was new to the business. Rick didn't understand the way the business worked. We were just accepting of the fact there was three-man teams like the Freebirds and the Road Warriors with Paul Ellering. Bringing four men in as a team was, in my mind, was unheard of and not even feasible in the business. Well, Jim and Steve, on their own, had sent out 8x10s to various people. And one of the people they sent it to was Jerry Lawler. And Steve and Jim called me up one day in October of '85 and asked me to meet them at Gold's Gym in Venice. And I went down to Gold's and they said, Billy, you're the only guy we can ask for advice that had no horse in the race, no stakes on the line here of what helping us is. We know you're not getting paid for this. So you're not benefiting in any way from any of this. We need honest advice on where we should go with our career right now. And we want out. We want to go and get on the road now. We don't want to wait. We want to exit from Rick. I don't know. That was between them. I know nothing of that. And he said, what do you advise? He sent pictures to Jerry Lawler, and he's interested in us. Because there weren't a lot of big bodybuilder kind of guys in the mid-'80s. There's a few, but there wasn't a lot. And I said, I would go to Tennessee and wrestle and take him up on that offer. I said, I worked there in 1975. I went there with Kris Kloss as my tag team partner when I was 18 years old. I wrestled every day of the week in Tennessee, 3 times on Saturdays. You get a lot of experience. And I said, what you guys do now, it's not training experience. You need ring experience in front of a crowd. Totally different. You could train for 10 years in the ring, and it's not the same as training, or wrestling in front of a crowd, responding to your moves of what they see and what they do. And they boo as a shoot, like that's messed up. You need to work in front of a crowd. I said, go to Tennessee. You've sent the pictures, except Jerry Lawler and Gary Jarrett's offer for you to come in as the Blade Runners or whatever that was. Go in down there, you'll get your experience. And that's exactly what they did. They took off and went to Tennessee. It upset Red. I don't think I told Red for a long time that I sent him on my advice. But again, I had nothing, no horse in the race. I was giving them honest wrestler to wrestler advice on what I would do if I looked like them and at this stage of what I know they need. And they need in front of a crowd experience. So that's kind of what happened. We continued on with the training camp with the remaining guys. Did some shows around LA using those guys. And eventually Dave Sheldon and Steve DeSalvo went to work for Stu Hart, I believe, in Canada. And then Dave Sheldon ended up in Dallas a few years later in Dallas, and then he passed away. Dave was a very good friend, very nice man to me always. All the guys, they all showed nothing but respect to me. I was closer to Dave. I was closer to Jim Hellwig than I was Steve. But when Jim accepted his Hall of Fame award for Vince in whatever year that was, 2014 or whatever, he mentioned myself and Red Bastien's name on his Hall of Fame speech. I couldn't have been more proud. He brought tears to my eyes because when I was watching him live doing that, not realizing he had 48 hours to live, I knew in my heart that I was on Jim Hellwig's mind that day. Years after, so you're talking almost 30 years after his training, I was still on his mind in his last hours of life. And that's important for me and my legacy to know that I impacted that man. And there's times, and I can just tell you this, take my word for it. There was times where Steve Gordon pulled me aside through the years of being around him. And he said, Bill, just so you know, there never would have been a Sting without a Bill Anderson. And he told me this one time in 2003. I was at a church event for Athletes International Ministries in Phoenix here. And Terry Taylor was being baptized in water by Ted DiBiase and Nikita Koloff. And I was sitting poolside at this hotel watching this happen. And I was in tears. And Steve saw me from the other side of the pool, and he comes walking across. He puts his arm around me. What's wrong? And I'm getting tears right now. I said, I'm just proud of where some of our guys have gone in this business. They've gone from being drunks and drug addicts to knowing the Lord. And I'm looking at Terry Taylor, not known as a wild party guy, but I was just proud of him for accepting the Lord as his Savior. And Steve, that's what he told me. He says, there never would have been a Sting without a Bill Anderson. And he says, my beautiful wife and kids maybe wouldn't have come along without a Bill Anderson. So he said, don't ever forget that. If you're ever feeling down, don't ever forget that. And I never have. And even to this day, I'm still not as close to Steve as I would like. Just life. But I respect him and love him, and I respect his longevity and his. You know, at one time, the Ultimate Warrior and Sting were respective world champions of their promotions at the same time.
Yes, they were.
How much more proud could I be than that? And, you know, Hall of Fame wrestlers, you know, I mean, so that's my main thing to say about Warrior and Sting. And Warrior performed just like he was told to perform. He didn't run to the ring maybe because he wanted to, or because he shook the ropes because he wanted to. That was his gimmick that Pat Patterson had for him. And that's what people have to remember, is that gimmick, it put asses in seats, to quote Eric Bischoff. That's the bottom line. He was successful. And don't ever forget that. Don't ever mistake wrestling ability for putting butts in seats. There's a lot of wrestlers that put butts in seats that were horrible in the ring. Haystacks Calhoun. How many guys were big and slow in the ring, but they put fans into the arena? That's what counts for a promoter. That's the bottom line. It's as a promoter, that's what you have to do. Mm-hmm. Is get a wrestler to perform like that. You could have 25 Ric Flairs. If it doesn't draw you anything, what good did it do? You need guys with gimmicks. And Warrior had a unique gimmick. You know, the tassels, the bulging arms. Hey, whether it's steroids or not, that was his business. And if it led to his death again, that was business. You know, I mean, it was sad. If it shortened his heart lifespan, I'm sorry to hear it and see it, because, you know, it's a shame in a wife and kids. To lose a man like that is always sad. So that's kind of what I had to say about that.
Well, you're completely right. They both touched a generation that goes beyond the spectrum of the hardcore wrestling fans. I mean, even when Warrior passed away, the hit sitcom Goldbergs did a whole show, you know, dedicated to the Ultimate Warrior. So he left his mark on the, you know, on pop culture.
Right. And obviously he was different. Obviously, if Warrior would have done a run-in on an ECW pay-per-view or Fully Dangerously, obviously that would have looked like crap, and it would have been a failure. But like Clint Eastwood said in the Dirty Harry movies, a man has got to know his limitations. You're booked the way your talent allows for you to go. And Pat had an idea for him. And no different than what Pat booked for a lot of guys. And, earlier we were talking about guys misused. Oh, my God, let's not forget Alan Koach, Bad News Alan. How badly was he booked? And many guys of his talent. Bad News Alan was a main eventer in Calgary. He could barely be an opening match guy for Vince, which is, again, part of Vince's deep roster of talent.
Yeah.
As well as, sometimes just not using talent smartly. So, I rambled.
No. We love it. I mean, you gave us a lot of great insight, and I think people need to remember that too. It's, it's ultimately, this business is about putting the butts in the seats, like you said, and selling tickets. And
exactly,
you make that emotional attachment with people. That's all that matters.
That's exactly it. I can't say it enough and tell you how strongly I feel. It's not about if everybody wrestles the same, or everybody has the same gimmick. What does it mean?
Right.
Everybody has to have some unique quality. Warrior took his to an extreme in a different direction. No different, no more, than the uniqueness of the Road Warrior entrance. I mean, how cool was it of them to come in? And all the guys, Boss Man, everybody had a unique entrance. And as I was telling you earlier, like Ravishing Rick Rude, my God, one of the best entrances.
Yeah.
Everybody was unique. Randy Savage, one of the greatest of all time.
Yeah.
So, just my take on that.
I would agree with everything you're saying. Another student I want to bring up, because I know he was near and dear to you, and he touched a lot of people that me and Kris have been close with over the years, the late, great Louis Spicoli.
Yeah. Louis was my best friend. I trained Louis in 1988. I'll tell you how much faith that I had in him and how good of a student he was. I can remember in my very first workout, I was training him at a little gym in Pasadena, a boxing gym and a boxing ring. By the end of the first workout I had with Louis, he was leading the class. He was saying, "George, if you don't mind, can I show the guys some stuff?" And I go ahead, Louis. And I wanted to see what the kid could do. He was drilling these guys, taking them through a workout like you wouldn't believe. He was good. And I'll tell you how good he was. About 3 months later, I was booked again through Terry Garvin, called me and says, "Bill, I need you and 3 more guys. I'm going to fly you up to Duluth and Rochester, Minnesota for TV tapings. So I need you to bring some good workers. So call me back tomorrow and give me the names, and I'll send you the plane tickets for these guys." Tapings were like 2 weeks away. I sent him Tim Patterson, my tag team partner, my main partner. Another guy, I'm kind of embarrassed, I can't remember his name. He was one of my students at the time. All I remember, he was a crazy driver. He rented a car. He was driving 90 miles an hour on the Minnesota highway. Can't think of his name, but the other guy I brought up was Louis Spicoli. First match for Louis Spicoli was against Outlaw Ron Bass on TV. Second match the next night was against Greg Valentine. Before the match, TJ Strongbow, Rene Goulet, Tony Gurria, Jack Lanza, all road agents, all in charge of TV, came up and says, "Okay, we know Patterson because he's done a lot of tapings for it. Who's this Spicoli guy?" I said, "His name's Spicoli." And obviously he stole the name. Louis stole the name from Fast Times at Ridgemont High from Sean Penn with that name, the Spicoli character. And I said, "Oh, Spicoli, he's been wrestling in Independence for the last year. He's one of my students." I said, "Trust me, Chief. Okay, I'll trust you. So Louis went out there, wrestled Outlaw Ron Bass. Typical TV match, 3-4 minutes. Did a hell of a job. The first thing, Bass comes through the curtain. Tony Gurria walks up. He says, "How was that kid to work with?" And Bass was fantastic. And Strongbow walks up and he says, "Hey, how was that kid to work with, Bass?" "Great, Chief." So a little later, Chief comes up to me and he says, "Billy, where have you been hiding this kid? You need to bring him to all the TV tapings that I book you on. Bring this guy. He's good." They had no idea until, oh my God, it was 25 years later. I was on the phone with Chief. He called me one day to wish me a happy Christmas, Merry Christmas. And I said, "Chief, I know you'll never remember this, but back in 1988, the first time you booked Louis Spicoli on a show, TV tapings, that was his first match. I had to work you guys to tell you he had been working for a long time. It was his first match." And Chief was, he said, "F you, Billy." He says, "What'd you do that to us?" And I said, "Hey, did the kid perform?" And he said, "Yes, he did." I said, "That's what I knew he would do too." I had faith. I put my career and reputation on the line for Louis Mucciolo, Louis Spicoli, because I had that much faith and love and respect for him. And he busted his butt out there. And the next night he did the same thing with Greg Valentine. And I can tell you this, a year or two later, we did TV tapings again. I was called by Terry Garvin to fly up to Calgary and Edmonton TV and bring a couple guys with me. And I brought Tim Patterson and somebody else up, Ricky Atafi or somebody else. I brought Louis Spicoli. Chief walks up to me and he says, "Hey, Billy, I'm thinking of putting Spicoli in a match with Ricky Steamboat. You think it'll be okay?" And I go, "Yes, it'll be okay." And he calls Spicoli over and he says, "Hey, Spicoli, I'm going to put you with Steamboat. Think you guys could have a good match?" He says, "Hell yeah, we can have a good match." I walk over with Steamboat and Spicoli says, "I want you to do every move that you did in, I think it was WrestleMania 3. Is that the one at the Pontiac?"
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
With Steamboat and Savage. He says, "I want you to do every spot in that match from beginning to end, just like you did with Savage. But we'll do it in front of these Calgary guys for TV." And Ricky just laughed. He said, "You think you can do all that?" And Louis says, "I know I can do it." He had that much confidence in himself, and sure enough, he went out there and did it. And Chief was so impressed. But again, that's how much faith I put in Spicoli. Louis had only had a 10-year career before he passed away in 98, February 15th of 1998. From 1988 to 88. In between that time, I took Louis to Mexico, took him to Japan, two tours of Japan for FMW. He was a great kid. I loved him. He worked for ECW. He worked for Vince as Rad Radford. He eventually started working for WCW, who he was working for at the time he passed. And Louis' main problem, he had a pill addiction that I didn't know about. I didn't even understand. I was very naive for a street smart guy like me that had been around the business for 25 years. I didn't understand the symptoms of pill overdose or pill side effects of falling asleep a lot or nodding off in planes and all that. I didn't know that. And I did a show in Tijuana 2 days before Louis passed. And Louis was supposed to meet me in Tijuana, getting this house show that I had a couple of my students wrestling on. I got a night, Lewis never showed. And on my answering machine, there was a message for Scully slurring his words, talking about, hey, Bill, sorry, couldn't make it to Mexico. I hope you forgive me. And that was the last message I ever got from Lewis. That was on a Friday night, early Saturday morning. And Sunday, I got a message on my machine from the kids that found Lewis in his house. He had fallen off his bed. He had died from an accumulation of pills and alcohol, wine. He had been taking Somas. He was in a lot of pain. His hip hurt him a lot. And he was supposed to fly out, I think, to be on a pay-per-view is what I remember, for WCW. And he passed away. And the saddest time of my life in the last 25 plus years, 26 years, I don't think there's a day that goes by I don't remember Lewis and think of him. I've been to his grave many times, and I just sit and cry every time I'm there. I can't even talk to anybody when I'm there. It's just I'm nothing but tears. He meant the world to me. He was a great guy, loyal friend, talented beyond anything. One of the most natural wrestlers. Although I never met Bobby Eaton, I compare him to a Bobby Eaton kind of guy. Just did everything perfect in the ring, a natural athlete. Lewis was that way. Lewis had one fault, and he had an addictive personality. And when he started taking pain pills, it was hard for him to get off of it. And that's where his problem lied. I was at his house the week before he died. We sat and watched him wrestling on TV. Sat and talked. And while we were there, Chris Farley, the comedian, had just passed away. And Lewis on the sofa, we were sitting next to each other. He holds up a newspaper like the Enquirer or the Star or something. And it had a picture of Chris Farley, and he was like he was drunk in this picture. And Lewis said to me, he held it next to him, and he said, Bill, don't I look just like Chris Farley? And I said, oh, Lewis, don't say that, man. That guy just passed, man. Don't ever talk like that. And it was a week later, he was gone. He was gone. And there's no getting him back. And a piece of my heart has been gone since then. I took him to many, many road trips across the western part of the country. I took him all the way. He got booked for Continental Wrestling when Superstar Bill Dundee was booking in 1989, I believe. And Dundee called me and he said, hey, I got a picture in the mail from a kid named Louis Tripoli. Do you know him? I said, yeah, I know him. He's one of my students, one of my best students. And Lewis never even told me he sent out pictures to promoters. And Dundee says, I'm thinking of bringing this kid in. Do you trust my judgment if I bring him in? I said, yeah, Bill, bring him in. He's a good kid. He'll work his butt off. And he says, do you trust him? I said, Bill, I'm giving you my word. And I had worked with Dundee in 75, many, many shows. He was my tag partner for a while. I says, trust me. You will not be disappointed. So Lewis got booked down there. Dundee called him and says, I'm booking you on Continental Wrestling shows starting whatever date. Your first show is Malden, Mississippi. Gave him a date. So Lewis called me and he says, Bill, I don't want to make that drive all the way down there by myself. Can you drive with me from LA? We'll drive to Oklahoma, where my mom lives, Oklahoma City, and then drive on to Mississippi. And then I'll fly you home. I'll pay for your ticket out of Birmingham, Alabama. And just work one show. And I actually was booked to work against Lewis for Continental. And I said, yeah, I'll go with you because, I wanted to keep him company. And so we drove all the way across country, stopped at Graceland, had to go see Elvis's grave. Yeah. And then we drove on down to Mississippi and did this show. And true to form, Lewis stayed with them until the promotion closed down, like half a year later or whatever. There was a lot of independents running, and then Lewis went on to work somewhere else. He came back to California. But that's the faith I had in that kid. Just a hell of a wrestler, and one of the most nicest, loyalist friends. You know, the true test of a friend, it's not what people say to your face, it's what they say behind your back. And I trusted Lewis that he put me over to everybody as his trainer, and that means the world to me. You know, it's like I said, like I did to you earlier when we started talking today about Jack Stud. I haven't even talked to Bill in a few months, I guess. It's what you say behind their back that counts. And I love the guy. He was a hell of a wrestler and a hell of a good friend. And I love to say that behind his back as well as to his face. And that's when you know you got a friend. And, you know, so I just wanted to throw that out.
Thank you so much. I think that's, it's true. At the end of the day, I think everything you said is true. And it's great to know that Louis was not only a pupil of yours, but one of your best friends in life.
Oh, my God. I trusted him with my wife, my kid, my baby. My son was only about 5 years old when he was really around Lewis a lot, 4 or 5. And I let Lewis babysit my son. I trusted him with my life. And not more important, but as important to me at the time, I trusted him with my contacts. All my wrestling promoters I worked for, Lewis would be sitting in the dressing room with the promoter when I wasn't around. He could have easily been a backstabber and said, "Hey, let's get rid of Bill Anderson, and you pay me what you're paying Anderson. I'll come in and book the talent. I know all the guys Bill's booking." Some guys did do that. Some guys would backstab you, you know. Lewis would never do that. Tim Patterson, my other partner, would never do that. Trusted him with my life, trusted him with my reputation. So that carried through to this point in my life right now. My friendships mean the world to me. I have some friends that are still alive that I've known for 50 plus years in the wrestling business. 15 years. You know, means the world to me.
Kris, you got any questions before we wrap up here?
Well, no, I mean, I know we
Ask me anything.
Well, we're closing in on the 2-hour mark right now.
I understand.
We know, man, Bill. Really appreciate it. You know, actually, fittingly enough, you just realized that you said that Louis passed on February 15th. I remember. The reason I know this, my birthday is February 18th, but the Long Beach, when we went to Long Beach for the Superstars of Wrestling tapings in '93. Yeah, that actually was recorded on February 15th, '93, and so that would have been 5. That would have been 5 years to the day Louis passed away.
Oh my God!
Yeah,
on that taping, I was probably working as the White Shadow.
White Shadow, yeah.
And I either worked against the Steiners or the Nasty Boys.
I want to say it was.
That's what my gut feeling was.
Because there was another guy under a mask, and they used the name Dan Farron. Here's a funny story. Okay,
check this out. Dan's an old friend of mine too.
Well, yeah, and I got to tell you this story. This is kind of funny.
Oh, so that was Augie Loya.
Huh?
Augie Loya.
Well, yeah. So I was ring. We had like third row, but we were right up against the railing when they announced Dan Farron in the mask. And I'm like, Dan Farron, because I knew him from Slammers, right? Wrestling Gym and Dynamite D and all that, which we'll talk about on part 2 with you. But I was ringside, right? This is a funny story. So I'm like, Dan Farron, you know, and this guy next to me that I didn't even see, he goes, "That's not Dan Farron." I'm Dan Farron. And I'm like, what? Yeah. And keep in mind, I knew him only from the cable radio network. So I had never seen Farron. And he goes, and I'm looking at him, the guys I'm with are looking at him. He goes, "You don't believe me? Look." And he gets his ID out, Dan Farron. So we start talking like,
Oh, that's a hell of a story.
Right. Like, what are the odds, right? But yeah, so
That's funny.
yeah, we interviewed him too. So.
Next time we'll talk about Herb Abrams, UWF,
Yes,
and him booking one of my students as Davy Boy Meltzer.
Okay.
I don't know if you guys remember that.
Yeah, I do remember that.
I remember that name. But no, we got a lot to talk about on part 2. And Bill, man, this has been great. Really appreciate everything.
You got it, guys. Thank you for your professionalism and your courtesy. It was an honor to be with you today.
Honor's all ours.
Bill, I want to give you plugs. Are you available for maybe, any upcoming wrestlers that may be over Zoom or maybe via some form of communication want your advice or critique or maybe guidance in their wrestling?
Yeah, although I am out of the business, very much so. And I tell you, people do contact me sometimes, like sight unknown. I don't even know who they are. They'll say, "Here's a picture of me. Can you give me advice on where I should take my career?" Sometimes, I don't know anything about them, or they'll say, "Where should I go wrestle?" And go, I have no contacts anymore. My main contact was Howard Finkel, Vince, and a lot of people like that are gone now. And I'm so far removed from the business. But I'll help anybody, if they're respectful on Facebook and message me. I'll do whatever I can. Certainly, I won't be rude to anybody. I'll treat everybody with respect and try, if I can honestly give them any advice.
All right. Awesome.
Thank you so much.
And you guys, let me know when you want me back, and you got it.
We definitely love to have you. We'll definitely take you up on that if you're willing to do it. We really appreciate it.
Certainly.
And Kris, any plugs before we end here?